So you really love somebody who's dying? Yes. Do you think they're dying? Do they refuse to be dying? Or are they dying? Because the answer to that question determines what you do next. So let's say they're dying. They don't agree that they are, but they are. They're in the early stages of it. What is the etiquette of your relationship with them? How do you conduct yourself as if what's happening is happening? That becomes the question for a dying person in your household, and it becomes the same question for a time like now, where we get to glimpse how utterly exhausted our acquisitive way of doing things has become. So what do you do? And the answer to my mind is you bear faithful witness to the realities of the dying. And you orchestrate yourself in the presence of the dying, not to spite it, not to overcome it, not to pretend it's not there for the sake of mutual comfort, but to risk it all, to risk the relationship, the friendship, whatever it is, and fail to conspire with the idea that there's more time. There isn't more time. And that confers upon this time a real sense of urgency. And if I really love you, I'm going to be with you as if you won't be around much longer. Right? And how that makes you feel in the short term, well, it's going to be wild and strange, and we don't know how to do it. We don't have an etiquette for endings in a culture that doesn't believe in them. So it's one of the reasons I guess I ended up doing that book, is to try to advocate for a sense of, you could say, fundamental etiquette, existential etiquette, an etiquette of kind of radical love about what it means to see something down. That's the phrase I came to use to describe it. And that's what we have to do now. We have to be willing to see our regime down. Of course, it means living with a lot less, including a lot less certainty and no sense of safety. I mean, my country embarrasses me as they whine and mule at the government for the sustaining handout and Look, man, this situation was completely anticipatable. It's unprecedented, but it's completely anticipatable. Okay? Now you've had a taste. How many more tastes you want? Don't make a meal of this. Push away from the table now. So to my mind, it goes like this. Elders are not people. Elders are not personality types, not an age group. An elder is by definition a verb. That means it has a sequence, a kind of cascading sequence of responsibilities that accrue to individual people and then pass them by. Not always the same people all the time. Comes and goes according to their skillfulness and their willingness to submit to life and so on like that. Yeah, all of that's true. But at the end of the day, you could say the fundamental elder function is the same function as the function of the artist. Like this. The artist's responsibility is to take their skillfulness, develop it, of course, learn like crazy, and ultimately the product of their work should function prismatically, not complementarily, but prismatically, by which I mean that the culture, which is invisible to itself, the daily comings and goings of a culture, basically like the fish's water, right? We don't see it. Something goes sideways, we see it for a little while, and then we go back to not seeing as quickly as we can. But what the art does is it takes the essentially invisible culture. The culture passes through the art, and the constituent parts of the culture are refracted out the other side. That's the encounter with the art, the unbidden, unsuspected consequence of arousal or discombobulation or, whatever it is. And so the principal responsibility of the artist is to get out of the way of the art so the culture can pass through, be refracted on the other side, with this caveat, that the artist has absolutely no obligation to restore, to reassure, to soothe the culture as a consequence of what the artwork does. Okay, they have to stand by the consequence of the work. And if they're doing it very well indeed, well, you can think of examples of people who've done that very thing. And unfortunately, sometimes the culture will turn them into politicians or spokespeople for their generations. And they should resist all seduction to do such a thing, because that means they're supposed to be complimentary of that particular generation they stand for, and so forth. So elders function in a similar way, I think. Elders' responsibility is to bear faithful witness to the current circumstances, the current regime, whatever the consequence of truth-telling might be. Whatever calamity ensues, first things first. The first thing is what's happening. And the benefit of their years should be that they are able to find a ever more faithful language that bears forward what's happening, so that you don't have to look past them, because they're no longer teaching. They're becoming practitioners of what they're advocating. So you just look to them. And alas, we live in a time now where so many older people are discredited for very understandable and even legitimate reasons, that it's a deep, challenging thing indeed to try to decide what constitutes the function of elderhood in a calamitous time like ours. Is it really that guy with his billions getting ready to send you to Mars if you got enough money?